Okay, so here's the second video I'm going to make on the topic of natural monopoly, and this will deal more with natural monopoly regulation. The first video I had went over the shape of this cost curve and what made this industry natural monopoly, so why we might expect to see monopoly prevail. Now, one thing we would note is that we've mentioned that in class that when you have a monopoly, one thing to try to do is to prevent a monopoly from forming. And so you could have antitrust laws to try to prevent monopoly from forming or to break up a monopoly in an industry when one happens to form. Well, antitrust isn't going to be a very good solution in this market simply because, as I said on the prior video, it's efficient to have one firm produce the entire amount of this good. We will have the lowest cost if we have one firm produce the entire amount of this good. So you wouldn't at some level want to employ the antitrust solution of trying to break up a single firm and have a bunch of small firms in here because you're simply going to have the higher costs here. All right, so then what could you do? Well, if you don't do anything and let this monopolist have this market position all by themselves, then they would be an unregulated natural monopoly. And so here's the market demand curve. We'd have to take the marginal revenue curve, as we've already seen in discussing monopoly, and the intersection of marginal revenue and marginal cost would give us the unregulated monopoly. So we'll call that PM and QM. And so we know we'd have the monopolist would make a profit, and then they would also be having a quite a large amount of inefficiency. We'd have a considerable deadweight loss with the monopolist charging a unregulated profit maximizing price. In other words, if we simply let one firm become dominant and have this position in the market and didn't try to do anything additional beyond that. What we've done in the United States is to adopt public utilities regulation. What public utilities regulation would involve is giving one firm a government designated a license, exclusive license or exclusive franchise to provide the good, and then they're subject to regulation, that the price that they charge has to be approved by the government. And they are limited to charge that price, so that you have a government agency that would review and approve their prices or rate structure for the public utility, and then they are also required to supply the good to everybody who wants to buy it at that price, what's known as common carrier regulation. So in the United States we do this. There are also some cases where you could have government ownership or government provision of the good directly. We do that to some extent in the United States. There are some communities, like say here in Troy, we have municipal electricity. And so that's the government, the city government providing that electricity in this case. We have water and sewer provided by cities across the United States. So again, that's a natural monopoly industry. So we do have some instances of public ownership in the United States. Public ownership has been more common for natural monopolies in other countries. What we've largely done is public utilities regulation. It's a theory that goes back to the early parts of the 20th century. It was devised by some economists as a possible thing to do here. And one thing to do would be to ask, well, suppose this industry was perfectly competitive was perfectly competitive. What price and outcome would we observe happen in this industry? Well, it turns out there's two different ways you could think about that. In perfect competition, we have price is equal to average cost because firms make a zero profit in the long run. And then we also have that price is equal to marginal cost. And that's what gives us efficiency. It turns out since we have the marginal cost curve and the average cost curve don't intersect in this case, if we were to apply these two different rules, they would give us different options or different outcomes for this industry, for this firm in this case. And average cost pricing and marginal cost pricing are the two ways that economists would suggest that we could go about trying to regulate the natural monopoly. So in other words, the government agency that's going to approve or set the prices for the government agency could try to mimic competition in this industry in one of two different ways, by either setting price equal to average cost or price equal to marginal cost. Now, economists prefer price equal to marginal cost, but in practice, there's virtually no natural monopolies get regulated in that fashion. They all get regulated primarily through average cost pricing, or also what's referred to as cost of service pricing. So we'll show both of them here on the diagram. But remember, average cost pricing is what has been chosen by most state commissions in terms of how they actually go about trying to set the monopolies, these public utilities rates or prices. So we have two alternatives: average cost pricing, marginal cost pricing, and they turn out graphically to be easy enough. Just find where the market demand curve intersects either the average cost curve or the marginal cost curve. So with average cost pricing, here's the demand curve. Here's our downward sloping average total cost curve. They would intersect here, so then here's the price where the marginal cost or the average cost curve intersects the demand curve, and so this would be the price or a rate that regulators would like to try to find. And then once they set that price, well, the quantity, because it's a common carrier regulation, is going to be determined by the market quantity demanded at that price. So you set this price, and then consumers, based on their demand curve, decide how much they want to buy. The regulated utility is required to serve everybody who was willing to sign up and pay for a service at that rate. And so this would be the outcome we'd have: PAC and QAC, and this would correspond to average cost pricing. At average cost pricing, the firm would be making a zero profit. But if we want to think about a deadweight loss, for the deadweight loss for the monopoly, we'd have to compare the demand curve and the marginal cost curve. And it turns out that there's still some deadweight loss at with average cost pricing, because price is still greater than marginal cost. We need to have price equal to marginal cost for efficiency of the market, for the efficient quantity of the good to be provided. So average cost pricing certainly would lead to a much larger quantity being provided than unregulated monopolists, and a much lower price, and would enforce on the firm the zero economic profit outcome that we would see it in perfect competition. But there is still a deadweight loss. So what we could do is alternatively say, well, why don't we have a regulator set price equal to the marginal cost? Well, in this case, I drew the marginal cost curve to be horizontal, so then the marginal cost price would simply be equal to the horizontal marginal cost curve in this case. And then again, with this common carrier requirement, the quantity demanded would be taken off of the demand curve. And so here we have the marginal cost price as set by the regulators, and then the quantity that we would observe in this market. With this quantity, we have no deadweight loss. And that's good. We're mimicking the efficient outcome. But then I said also, like, this doesn't actually get done in practice. Why is that? Well, what you'd have to do is consider at this quantity here, the cost per unit for the monopolist is actually higher than the price that they're charging. At this, if facing marginal cost pricing, a monopolist would make a loss, an economic loss. It might be an accounting profit, but would definitely be an economic loss. If they were only allowed to charge the marginal cost pricing, they would end up facing losses here. Now, no firm is going to want to be in that position. So no private firm would in effect accept the position to be a regulated natural monopolist if they were going to be regulated under marginal cost pricing, unless they were to receive some subsidy from the government to cover their losses. And politically in the United States, that's really been a non-starter. And so the idea that you'd have these large utility firms, and then the government would be giving them millions of dollars a year in a subsidy to cover their economic losses, which might still give them they might already have an accounting profit, but simply not high enough a rate of return to have a zero economic profit. That doesn't really politically doesn't seem to be a possibility. So we really don't observe this. There's also then issues in terms of a firm might be able to exaggerate their losses and then get an even larger subsidy. So they might end up making a economic profit if they could overstate the amount of their costs that they would otherwise have to face. So. And these would be the two options: average cost pricing and marginal cost pricing. Although, like I said, in 98% or more of the times that state commissions in the United States regulate natural monopoly, they really regulate them under a cost of service regulation. But remember, we can't really adopt an antitrust solution to this case, because you really don't want to break up the monopoly, because you do have much lower costs. You have only one, you only have to incur these first unit costs one time. You only have to have one set of power lines, or one telephone grid, or one set of water mains if you have a natural monopoly. But then you do have to choose the pricing in such a way as to avoid allowing there to be a significant deadweight loss.